What up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian from House of Rasslin, and this is my review for the October 7th episode of AEW Rampage and AEW Battle of the Belts 4. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification so that way you are notified when the House of Wrestling drops its latest content. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Man, it's hard to gauge both these shows. They were both 1 hour, but man, oh man. If I had to sum this whole show up, now the wrestling matches were decent and stuff like that, but I think where AEW is at now is a lot of the backstage stuff is starting to be exhausting to their fan base, and it's starting to show. And not only to the fan base, but it does come across on TV as you watch the matches unfold and everything, and you've watched these guys for the past 3 years, and some people a year and everything. It does come across that this backstage stuff is also becoming exhausting to the talent. Because normally, with most of the talent that were on both cards, not everybody, some people, Moxley, those guys, they clicked, but it does seem like that for the other guys, for the other wrestlers, it does seem like it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe affected their psyche, because a lot of these wrestlers that were wrestling tonight, usually they come out with a lot of aggression. And that's something that I noticed about this show, that the aggression was very spotty, and just very, like, sometimes non-existent. Like, it was just like, all right, well, I don't know, it just didn't, there wasn't a fluidity to this show. As far as the aggression and the intensity and the sense of urgency. And by sense of urgency, I mean, the title matches, why they're wrestling. Then, of course, when context was explained to a storyline, there just wasn't that fire and that gusto. And yeah, AEW is in a weird place. And by that, I mean, AEW is just weird right now. Like, it's weird. Like, you want to get behind people, but at the same time, you're thinking, okay, Punk, Omega, and Ace still, the Young Bucks, they're suspended. Then you had this whole thing with Sammy and Andrade. Then you had the thing with Eddie Kingston. You had a few wrestlers injured, Chris Statler. So it's like, you want to get behind the wrestlers, but you're like, I don't know if they're going to get into a backstage incident and get suspended, or they're going to get injured. So it's like, I don't know if I can invest into these wrestlers. Like, I love watching the show, and I'm just speaking hypothetically. People may feel like I enjoy watching the show, but like, I really can't get invested as I was maybe 6-7 months ago, because I don't know if somebody's going to get injured or get into a backstage brawl and, get suspended. And now it's like, all right, well, here we go. And of course, everyone mentions that AEW's roster's bloated and all they have this and have that. But once you start putting people, either you start seeing people get injured, they're not on TV. And then, of course, if they're suspended, it becomes very glaring of a bigger issue that AEW has. And it's more, I wouldn't say a lack of storytelling. It's a lack of context with whatever storyline they're telling. And then the opposite is also true, that there's a lot of context with no storyline. So it's really, like I said, it's weird. AEW is weird. I've been watching AEW since the beginning. I've watched Dynamite, Rampage. I mentioned this on the Wednesday night Dynamite review. This is the weirdest I've seen AEW. And mind you, I'm used to backstage, brawls and all that other stuff. I mean, I grew up in the 80s with all that wild stuff with Bruiser Brody in Puerto Rico and not getting paid, and the Road Warriors, and Jim Crockett Promotions, and them not wanting to uh, listening to Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher as far as uh, jobbing, taking a pin or body slam, the Sean Brett stuff, the Click, that backstage stuff, WCW, TNA, WWE with Booker T and that whole thing. And like, I'm used to it. Like, it's a part of pro wrestling history. But with AEW, it just, the backstage stuff, and not so much the backstage stuff, it's the knowledge and the awareness of the backstage stuff to the fans that it's becoming exhausting. And I mentioned this on a live stream I was doing Thursday on TikTok, that AEW does have an issue of optics, and the optics are mostly negative right now. And it does seem like they are putting an effort into it, and I'll give them credit for that. They've acknowledged, hey, we're putting these people in this position, but it's like, really, like, they really got to work on that optics, because man, right now it's just, like I said, AEW is just weird. Like, it's just weird, man. And this show tonight, most of these wrestlers, most of the matches, mind you, everything was good, but there was just something missing. And it just felt like I said, it's like, I want to get, maybe fans feel this, I want to get behind these guys, or these wrestlers, but they either get injured and they're off TV for a while, or we don't know if they're going to blow up in some backstage segment and get suspended. So it's like, it's damned if I do, damned if I don't as a fan. And you're like, well, I'll watch it, but like, it's hard for me to get into it. So let me get into the results, and then I'll break down both these shows. So I know most of you guys like, man, this, like, look, man, I got to keep it real, man. Like, I enjoy AEW. It's a great alternative to WWE. It's satisfied the need of being an alternative, a big alternative to WWE. But you can't ignore this stuff, man. Like, if you ignore this stuff, like, you're being naive, and you're setting yourself up for disappointment as a fan. Like, do not let your fandom for wrestlers and just fantasy booking block, like, hey, like, it's entertainment, but like, this is some weird entertainment that's coming across my TV screen that, like, it was fluid, but like, something's, it's almost like a cat. They got catnip, and it's like, you don't know. It's like, damn, this cat lost their mind. That's what, not saying AEW lost their mind, but it's just like, oh, okay. So on Rampage, you had Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta. They defeated Private Party and Roosh. You had Josh Woods and Tony Nese. They defeated the Varsity Blondes. You had Ty Mello and Anna Jay defeat Madison Rayne and Sky Blue. And in the main event for the 6-man trios title, you had Death Triangle defeat Dark Order. Let me get a swig of water real quick before I continue. And then, this is what was interesting about this whole show. Like, I don't know if it's because of their contract and the episodes as far as Rampage and Battle of the Belts. They actually should have just called it Battle of the Belts and just had it 2 hours, but maybe they want to stick to have only titles being defended on Battle of the Belts, their concept. So it is what it is, man. I'm not going to harp on that, because the technical and, the whole contract side with TNT and Warner Media, they probably wanted. So logistics wise, I could see why they did this. So Battle of the Belts, you had Pac. He retained his All-Atlantic Championship. And mind you, Pac wrestled back-to-back. So Rampage ended with the Death Triangle. and then you had Pac and Trent Beretta to start off Rampage. Then you had Jade Cargill defeat Willow Nightingale. That was a great match. I'll get into that later. And then you had FTR retain their Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships against the Gates of Agony. So that is your results for AEW Rampage and Battle of the Belts. Oh man, it's so with Rampage starting, you had Jon Moxley come out, and this is where I'm coming from as far as weird. So like you didn't have Private Party and Roosh get introduced or anything. Normally that happens on Rampage, but I don't know, it was just really weird that they didn't at least introduce Roosh, because normally Roosh is introduced. I don't know, it's just weird. So you had Moxley come out, Claudio. The best part of this match was Claudio. He had Mark Quinn on his shoulder, and then he had Isaiah he had him by the legs, and he wound up executing at least 3 swings while he had Mark Quinn on his shoulder and had Isaiah Cassidy. That was impressive. But overall, this match, I mean, I don't know, it was a good match, but like I said, this was a match that, like, I don't know, it just, like, of course there's a storyline with Roosh and Private Party, but there wasn't no context given to it as far as, like, deeper like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that's an issue with AEW. Like, there's always these storylines with no context, and then there's a context with no storyline. So it's like, huh? So, I mean, it was a good match and everything, but it just, with, like, Blackpool Combat Club, Roosh, like, I love their matches, everybody, it's just, something didn't click. I don't know if it was, I don't know, it just, man, how do I put it? The presentation and just the vibe that you got from it just didn't connect or anything like that. It was like, honestly, looking at this card now, outside of the Willow Nightingale Jade Cargill match made sense because they've been teasing that and they've wrestled before, so it's like, okay, there's context, and of course there's a story, but it may be very little, but there is a story with the context, so that's solid right there. FTR and Gates of Agony, kind of. It's like they're challenging for the titles, so it was kind of like a last minute thing as far as context storyline. Trent and Pac, similar thing. Then on the Rampage side, Private Party and Roosh versus Moxley, like, no context and storyline, just a match. Varsity Blondes and Josh Woods and Nice, a little bit of storyline. I don't know. Man, the Ty Mello and a Jay, a little bit of context because they had a confrontation on Dynamite, but there hasn't been a story, so it's like, And then of course the main event, that was pretty much changed because of the Andrade, Sammy Guevara backstage thing, where it was supposed to be number 10 versus Andrade, Mass versus, loser leaves, Andrade leaves AEW. So that was changed. And then, of course, there was the anniversary of Brody Lee's last match on Dynamite, or his last match in AEW. Forgive me, guys. So there was a context, but there was like barely any story. So that's something that's really interesting. Yeah, that Man, it's hard. So, yeah, the first match, Private Party, Moxley. I mean, it was a good match. A lot of this is awesome chants throughout this show. That's why I said that these matches on both Rampage and Battle of Belts, like they had a lot of this is awesome chants, and not just this is like really loud. This is awesome chants. So that tells you the crowd was into it, but it's on man. There's a disconnect between the TV crowd and the crowd in the arena, and the crowd in the arena should be even more like the ones watching TV. Or you guys get what I'm saying. The crowd in the arena should be, or the crowd on TV. Forgive me, guys. The crowd on TV should, or the crowd watching AEW television should be more like the crowd in the arena, and there's a disconnect. And it's not so much because of the fans itself, it's more because of the presentation. So there's a lot going on there. Then we get a video package of Death Triangle. The Varsity Blondes Josh Woods match, that was basically a squash. They did mention that Josh Woods and Tony Nese are 7-1, so it is impressive. As the match ended, this is one thing that was very interesting about this. They showed Arn Anderson looking and shaking his head. So, wonder, is he going to take the Varsity Blondes under his wing and teaming with his son Brock Anderson? I don't know. Very interesting tease. But again, the issue with AEW is context, storyline, and follow through. Like, there's very little follow through with this. And then as that happens, Mark Sterling, he mentions this was pretty easy. He's trademarked Varsity, and now Tony Nese and Josh Woods are, the trademark is Varsity Athletes. Pretty cool name. Hopefully they put other amateur wrestlers and wrestlers in that stable, because that could be a very good stable in AEW, considering that AEW is pretty much match heavy, and the rankings and all that other stuff. So man, if they do that, that could be a really refreshing faction in AEW that could be really good. That'd be interesting. Like, me personally, I don't mind it, because that could be good. Of course, Mark Sterling's very kooky and funny and everything, so it depends how they play that off. But a stable of shooters and wrestlers and athletes, that's good. And then he mentions that the Varsity Blondes can't use Varsity Blondes anymore. So it's like, what does Brian Pillman and Griff Garrison do? Where are they going to go? Hopefully AEW follows through. Like I said, it's an issue with AEW. So we get, from that point when he mentions that, he's like, yeah, my growing, like, this is so stupid, man. He says, my growing has been hurting ever since Scissoring Day on Wednesday. It's like, oh my God. Like, dude, that's so, like, it's one of those things, like, did you hear what you just said? Of course I know that he's saying it, but it's like, that's funny. Of course, the Acclaim come out to a big reaction. And Max Caster makes a Draymond Green reference. Of course, Draymond Green got into a fisticuffs at practice with his teammate, which is like, man, what the hell's in the air in all these sports with people fighting on the same team and stuff like that. So then we get Anna Jay, Ty Mello, Madison Rain, and Sky Blue. Man, it was really hard. It was really difficult to get into this match. The crowd, watching on television, the crowd didn't boo, which is good. Like, these women did not deserve, maybe there was somebody somewhere, they didn't deserve to be booed or anything like that. But the audience didn't cheer as much either. Like, there was a point in the match towards the end where they, clapped and everything, but they just sat and watched. And for me, that's concerning because like no reaction is a reaction, and it's like, man, that shouldn't be the case. Like especially with you know Ty Mello and Anna J, Madison Ring, and Velvet Sky, not Velvet Sky, Sky Blue. Um, you saw more of Anna J and Sky Blue in this match, which looking back on it, maybe they should have put more Ty Mello and Madison Rain in the match and have Anna J and Sky Blue kind of like be secondary somewhat and just have Ty Mello and Madison Rain lead the match because it was just very, oh man, it was just difficult to watch because it was just like, all right, like they were doing moves, but it was just like something just didn't connect. Like something just didn't like, ooh, damn, this is damn, okay, damn, this is damn. Like it was just all right, cool, great. I don't know, it's just how it is, man. Like I said, AEW is just weird now. Then we get it backstage. Of course, Mark Henry, he has Dark Order and he has Death Triangle. Then after he does that, we get a backstage interview or pretty much like a video thing with Jigga with Swerve hyping up his match against Billy Gunn at next Wednesday's Dynamite in Canada. And basically tells Billy Gunn, hey, the clock is ticking and you're done. And he was very heelish. I love this. He was very heelish. Came across like, and it's like, we're going to get that Sir Strickland from Defy when he wrestled against Nick Wayne and he cut that promo. A few people mentioned that online, and I remember watching that match because it was the first match that Sir Strickland had before, I believe, before he went into AEW, and he had his interest theme, and it's like, I love his interest theme. Like, oh man, it's like, that is an awesome interest theme, and it's just like, oh man, and just the way he was with Nick Wayne and taunting his mom and everything. It's like, yo, Swerve Strickland is a heel that like gonna be an interesting heel in AEW. Then we had the Dark Order, the Triangle match. On commentary, Chris Jericho makes a Steve Austin and Dwayne Johnson reference, basically talking about Pac wrestling twice in one night. Kudos to Pac. That's insane. So in this match, this was probably one of the very few underwhelming Death Triangle matches. And by underwhelming, I mean, again, it's underwhelming not so much because of them. It was more underwhelming because of the shadow that's around AEW. And I think that speaks to the whole card, Rampage and Battle of Belts, that because of the shadow of what transpired on Wednesday. And of course, Sammy Guevara coming out and, he gets the pin and they're raising him on his shoulder. And that time, excuse me, guys, at that time, we didn't know all the details and, more stuff came out about it. But even still, a lot of people felt that, hey, if both men were involved in a backstage altercation, both men should not be on the show. Not one, but both. And that kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, including myself. I did not care too much for it. And I knew when I seen him in the first segment, or the interview segment right after the first match, and they showed him there, it's like, ooh, this is not gonna be good. It's like, ooh. And I remember tweeting, it's like, man, this crowd is not gonna react to it. Like, they are going to boo this guy, and people watching are not like, no, not a lot of people are gonna feel this. No matter what way AEW can put it, like, it's gonna be received very negatively, and it did. Um, and getting back to this match with Death Triangle and Dark Order, like it did pick up towards the end of the match. John Silver, it picked up when John Silver got the hot tag. Like John Silver is one of the best wrestlers with a hot tag because man, he goes in there like a cannonball, and man, man again, man, he's got a lot of potential, man. But it's like he has to come out of whatever cocoon it is. But man, I love his hot tags, man. They are so good. Then you had Jose come out, and then this is where things got interesting. You had Roosh hand Pac the hammer. Pac uses it to hit, I believe it was 10 over the head. Lucha Brothers make the pin. 1, 2, 3. They win. So now the question is, are we getting Death Triangle into LFI? And is it going to be them coming into the faction with Andrade? And that's the thing. We don't know what's going to happen with Andrade. If he's going to be just basically sit at home till his contract's up, or is he going to be sent home for a week or two and come back? You know, are we going to get Death Triangle with Andrade and Roosh, or are we going to get Death Triangle with just Roosh, and eventually Roosh kicks Pac out and we get Roosh with the Lucha Bros, which that's a badass trio right there. Like, that's dope. So a lot of questions with that. So it's like, very interesting. Let's keep an eye on this. So that was Rampage. And then right after that, Pac stayed in the ring and he had his match with Trent Beretta from the Best Friends. And there is a spot in this match where Pac performed a brainbuster from the stage, brainbuster suplex from the stage onto a table right next to it. And that was a crazy spot. And me personally, it felt very unnecessary. Like they didn't have to do it. For one reason, it's a title match. So why are you going to put yourself in danger with your opponent if all you got to do is put him through a table, not yourself through a table, get in the ring, he gets counted out, you keep the title. So it's like, I really thought that was a really unnecessary spot. And when he hit the spot, you know, the commentator was like, man, you know, if you look, Trent Beretta, like his neck hit, I don't know, the part of the table. And I was concerned about him because he just recently had neck surgery, I believe at the beginning of this year, end of last year. So it's just like, oh man, I hope this guy isn't injured. Like as wrestling fans, we're tired, we're exhausted of seeing these wrestlers get injured. Like, we're exhausted. I don't care if it's WWE, AEW, Impact, New Japan. Like, we're exhausted of seeing these guys injured. Like, please take care of yourselves. Like, we're fans, we enjoy your work, but please don't overdo it. You know, take yourself out by doing something, you know, just wild. So yeah, that was a crazy spot. There's a lot of AEW chants. It was cool that Trent reversed the Black Arrow, which was crazy. But then the freaking brutalizer submission, man. He got it in. That was a bunch of fight forever chants, but didn't hold. Pac got the win. So right after he got the win, and which was interesting about the win was that the way he was able to get the finish was Roosh came back out again, gave him the hammer, hit Trent Beretta and everything. So it's like, okay, now they're leaning into this Roosh Pac Death Triangle thing. So it's like, this is going to be interesting how this plays out. And as soon as that happened, Orange Cassidy came out. He just started attacking Pac. They separated, security separated them and everything. And So we're gonna get Pac and Orange Cassidy, I believe, next week, either on Dynamite or Rampage. I believe it's Dynamite. So we're gonna get, or no, maybe it's gonna be in Canada. So we're gonna get Pac and Orange Cassidy for the All Atlantic Championship. That should be a fun match. It is their third match that they've pretty much had in AEW, so interesting. But again, man, storyline, no context, context, no storyline, and this falls into the context, no storyline. Just is what it is. So we get a backstage segment with Chris Jericho and Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. Jericho's like, it's time to come home, referring to Daniel Garcia. It's time to come to your two dads and your older brother. And then next week he says it's going to be the return of the Lionheart and all hail the Ocho, basically hyping up his match with Bryan Danielson next week. Then there was a video package of Claudio talking about the Danielson-Jericho match next week. Then we get, for me, this was the match of the night for both shows. And it was Willow versus Jade. Both women got a crowd reaction. And this, outside of the first match on Rampage, this was a match where the whole crowd, you saw them get into it. Like, they were into it. They react to it. They were Jade. They were Willow. They were into it, man. And there was a spot in the match where Willow did a dive on the baddies and Jade escaped. It was like, that was a nasty dive. Like, nasty as far as, man, she, like, 1 centimeter missing or, not getting like, it could have went really bad from the way it looked on TV, mind you. In person, it probably looked totally different. So you had that. Then there was a spot where Willow performed a Hurricane Rana on Jade Cargill. It was like, whoa. And like, Willow got in a lot of offense on this match. Like, I believe Willow got in the most offense of any Jade Cargill opponent. And she got not just any offense, she got some heavy licks in. And eventually, Jade countered. She got the front face bomb. 1, 2, 3. Jade Cargill is now 39-0. It's going to be interesting to see who defeats Jade Cargill. Or, a lot of people have been saying this might happen, that Jade Cargill just might say, you know what? I need to go after the AEW Women's World Championship and make her double champ. Which, honestly, right now, that wouldn't be a bad thing, but it is what it is. But post-match, Jade celebrating everything. Vicky Guerrero comes out, excuse me, and Jade and the baddies are looking, and they're not paying attention. And Nyla Rose comes, looks at the TBS Championship, and runs off. And Layla Gray and Kiara Hogan, they run after her, and they're like, oh my God. So I thought that was cool because it's like, ooh, now there's a storyline with context with Jade Cargill now, on top of the being undefeated and stuff like that, because basically she have a storyline and then this, and of course she did have a storyline with Chris Statlander, but she's injured. So it was just, I'm like, oh man, okay, this is cool. Like, it's refreshing for Nyla Rose, because Nyla Rose was just, she's been off TV for a while, and it's like, oh man, it's really refreshing. And now it's like, it's almost like a subtle face turn for Nyla Rose. So it's like, hey, it's about time Nyla Rose is a face. Like, she's been a heel since the beginning of the AEW. It's like, all right, this might be time for it. And if we do get the Nyla Rose that's on Twitter, man, that could be really entertaining, because, man, she is very entertaining and a great sense of humor. So it's going to be interesting to see this whole dynamic between Jade Cargill and Nyla Rose. Like, going to be interesting how this pulls off. So we'll get a backstage segment with Ethan Page and Stokely Hathaway with Matt Hardy. AEW's definitely leaning into this contract tampering, the rumors and stuff like that. Like, they're really playing into it, and it's almost overkill now because it's like they're overdoing it. Like it's not a subtle thing. Like they're really uh mentioning it, especially during Matt Hardy's thing. Of course, it ties into the private party and that's whole thing, but it's like there's other ways you can discuss without, yeah, this contract tampering, and it's just like it comes across very lazy creative, and like you could be a little bit more sophisticated, especially with the guys involved. Ethan Page, um, Stokely Hathaway, Matt Hardy, like all those guys are very sophisticated. They're above that little innuendo stuff. So you get that in the line of this segment. Stokely Hathaway pulls out an iPad and he's like, "Yeah, this is Jose's iPad, which I'll return when I feel like it." It's like, oh my god! And he shows Matt Hardy talking with Private Party. So that's the whole storyline with that. It is what it is. Of course, it ends with Matt Hardy saying "delete, delete." So it's like, man, are we going to get broken Matt Hardy anytime soon? Honestly, the as weird as AEW is right now, it would actually be refreshing and smart to bring back broken Matt Hardy because they need something different. Very much. So then from there, we get a backstage segment with Hook, and he has the Trustbusters envelope. He tears it up and leave. That was a segment. Again, storyline, no context. Context, no storyline. This Hook segment was more storyline, no context. Like, and by context, I mean go along the lines of follow through. Like when there's context provided, there's a follow through and just a depth to the story that's unfolding. Then we get a backstage segment with Toni Storm and Sheeta hyping up their match this Wednesday on Dynamite with Britt Baker and I believe Jamie Hayter. Yeah, that will be the tag team match. Then we get FTR versus Gates of Agony. The Ass Boys were dressed up like FTR at ringside. That was hilarious. There's a loud FTR chants. They got a huge reaction. Again, this match, like I said, it falls under the category of context. They're fighting for, they want the AEW, not the AEW, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, which they mentioned on this past week's Dynamite. But there's not a lot of storyline. FTR had their issue with Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt. That whole, it's, like I said, no storyline and very little context and no storyline. And this was a really good match, but again, if there's no storyline with the context that they gave, like it just comes like, okay, it's match, they're wrestling, it gives you very little to get invested in as a viewer and as a fan of AEW. And it's just like, it was a good match. Like everyone loves FTR. It's like, but it's like, and of course with, and it's not a knock at Tio Leone and Khan. Those guys are great and they're phenomenal, but it doesn't help them because we hardly see them. So there should be a storyline with the context of them being there. So it's like, and I mean, the highlight of this match, I mean, the major thing to come out of this match, better term, was after the match, Gates of Agony, they attack FTR. FTR wins the match with a backslide. It is what it is. But Gates of Agony, they attack FTR. Then Wardlow comes out. They're beating him up. And then you had, before Wardlow came out, you had Brian Cage come out. Then Wardlow, he evened up the odds. And then Gates of Agony and the Embassy, they were just beating down FTR and Wardlow. Then Samoa Joe's music hits. They come out, or he comes out. He just starts cleaning house. And FTR, Samoa Joe, and Willow come out victorious in the scuffle and everything. So that's how the show ends. Man, like I said, man, AEW is in a weird place. There's wrestlers who have storylines, but there's no context follow through with it. Then there's other wrestlers that are presented with a context and some form of follow up, but no storyline. Just very weird. Like AEW is just very weird. And again, like I said at the beginning of this review, it's now right now it's really difficult to get invested in AEW because, like I said, storyline and context and that whole thing, but also you don't know if somebody's gonna get injured, and the other thing is you don't know when's the next backstage brawl. So it's like, man, how can I get invested when I don't know if this guy or this wrestler is going to be injured or they're going to be suspended from some backstage brawl that's going on? And, the other aspect is, I don't know if this guy or, wrestler is going to be on TV or, if there's going to be a storyline and, they put him on TV, but there's no context to, it's just not a continuity there like they had, literally 2 weeks ago. And it's just like, man, this is crazy. And even going further, like last year, there was more continuity where it was very little lack of context and storyline. And now it just seems like it's just very fragmented. And it's very difficult to get into AEW right now. And that's disappointing. But that is my review for the October 7th episode of AEW Rampage and Battle of the Belts 4. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification so that way you are notified when the House of Wrestling drops its latest content. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, we still got more wrestling this weekend. So if you don't like one thing, there's always going to be something else. And that's the beauty of wrestling right now. You got so many companies, and not every company is going to hit. So when one company doesn't hit, you got another company to watch. So it's the beauty of it. So with that, I'm out.